for FamilyAffaires.com here with Dr. Temple Grandin. Hi, Dr. Grandin.
How are you? Fine.
Dr. Grandin, I'd like to ask you a question to start off. This is Autism Awareness Month, and there's much awareness going on all around autism. What is one of the most misunderstood things that you believe is out there about autism?
Well, the problem is you got a huge spectrum that goes from all the geeks and nerds in Silicon Valley who avoid the labels and go to Montessori schools. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got somebody that remains nonverbal and cannot dress themselves. And with the diagnostic changes in 2013 to call this huge spectrum autism and merge it all together, I think it's been a pretty bad disaster. You know, if you've got a little kid who's not talking, I can say 20 hours a week, one-on-one, ABA, or some other early intervention program. I can give you a canned answer. But once they get older, the services and education they need is so much more variable. Now, the big problem I'm seeing with the fully verbal kids is they're getting overcoddled. I'm seeing kids at autism conferences, fully verbal, they do not know how to shake hands. Nobody's taught them how to shake hands. See, being brought up in the 50s with a 1950s way of structured teaching of manners, that really benefited some of the geeks and nerds. Because I think of kids I went to college with that I know are on the spectrum, and they have jobs, they own businesses. Also, I work in the cattle industry, and I go over to the cattle industry, a meatpacking plant, and there's a metal fabrication guy that would be labeled on the spectrum today. He owns a metal fabrication company. This really bothers me because I'm also seeing some of these kids, especially the fully verbal ones, get totally hung up on their autism.
On the label.
On the label. And I'm a visual thinker, so I don't see the label. I go, okay, how much speech has he got? Is he good at math? Is he good at reading? What's he good at doing? Another big problem is taking the skilled trades and the hands-on classes out of the schools is one of the worst things they ever did. They teach all kids practical problem solving. For some kids on the spectrum, skilled trades would be perfect. Not for everybody. Specialty retail would be another really good field. And then you've got the math kids. They need to be going to Silicon Valley. They need to be making all the electronic stuff, not getting addicted to it.
Right. So really, your feeling is that by widening the spectrum so much, what's happening is that the children are not getting specific services that they could have otherwise gotten to help them in the future and to help them with
now,
the
this
skills.
is an overgeneralization. The little kids, real little kids, services have really improved. The early intervention programs, that's improved. And you do this with real little kids, you know, like under age 5, you do the same thing with them. But it's when they get older where there really is a problem. You're getting somebody that's a mathematician getting put in the same classroom with somebody that has difficulty dressing themselves. And it's all called autism. Right. That doesn't really make very much sense.
And there's such a wide difference between those two individuals.
And I think taking out the speech delay is one of the criteria, and I think it's a disaster because that is one of the criterion on severity levels. You know, the scientists said, well, the main problem you have in autism is social awkwardness and the problems with social. That's true. This is where the 50s upbringing helped. Use teachable moments. Okay, if I picked up the mashed potatoes and started to eat it like that, mother said use the fork. You see, it's teachable moments. You give the instruction. You don't scream no, you give the instruction. And you might have at the dinner table 4 or 5 different teachable moments.
That would be a teaching lesson that any child would go through, not just a child who has autism.
But if they don't get that lesson, it hurts the autistic kid a lot more than it hurts the normal kid. Because they've got to be taught things like shaking hands, like teaching somebody the customs of a foreign country. Mm-hmm. This is how much pressure you do. This is how far away you stand. And you've got to stretch these kids. You've got to stretch them just outside the comfort zone, or they're not going to develop. Now, there are issues with sound sensitivity, some of the sensory issues. Now, on sound sensitivity, if you get the kid to control the amount of exposure to it, that can sometimes help desensitize it.
Great information. Thank you so much for taking time today to sit with us and to educate our audience. Thank you, Dr. Grandin.
Well, thank you for having me.